Hello and welcome. My name is Natty Cash, and we are here to talk Champions League. And we are going to go through the entire 36 teams that are part of the new league phase and determine where they're going to finish in the league phase. I do not know if many content creators are going all the way from 1 to 36, but I thought that was a good challenge for me to do today. So let's take a look at all 36 teams. I'm going to start from the bottom, make my way all the way up to the top, and determine where each of the 36 competitive teams are going to land. Let's get started. The first team that I have here is Sturm Graz from the Austrian Bundesliga. Even though they automatically qualified by being Austrian champions, I think looking at their schedule is pretty darn tough when most of their opponents are from top 5 leagues, aside from Club Bruges and Sporting Clube de Portugal. I think it's going to be tough for them. I still see Sporting as being a strong team as well, and Club Bruges at home, they have been to Champions League rounds many times, and so it's going to be a tough challenge. This would be one of the teams that potentially I'll see them getting no points out of 8 games. I know that's harsh, but I potentially see that happening to Sturm Graz. So I have put them at the bottom with 36. Next, I see in 35th position Slovan Bratislava. Again, when you look at their fixture list, it's very tough, especially the top 4. Man City, Bayern Munich, Milan, and Atleti is really difficult. On top of their pot 4 teams being Stuttgart and Girona. Where I might see them get maybe a draw, I would see most likely at home against Dinamo. And again, even I look at away at Celtic as being a difficult matchup for them. So I see Slovan Bratislava sitting in 35th. In 34th, I have Sparta Praha. Again, you look at the top 4 games, Inter, Man City, Atleti, and Leverkusen as being very tough matchups. Stade Brestois and Stuttgart as your pot 4 teams are also difficult. Again, maybe you can pull out a draw against Red Bull Salzburg at home. And maybe if Feyenoord is not the same team as they were last year, you can get points there. But I think it's going to be very tough. Even though they're doing well domestically, it's going to be tough for them to get points. I'm putting them 34th. In 33rd, I have Crvena Zvezda or Red Star Belgrade. Sorry, my bad. When we take a look at their fixture, again, it's a tough one. Stuttgart and Monaco are tough matchups as pot 4 teams. You may get a result against Young Boys. Maybe you're luck out to some result at home against PSV. But I really do see Red Star Belgrade. Again, I'm not going to try to pronounce their proper name, but Red Star Belgrade as being having a difficult challenge and being in 33rd position. Next in 32nd is Young Boys. Again, I gave them just the edge because they have a little bit home advantage against Red Star Belgrade. But again, when you look at their matchups, it's difficult. Aston Villa and Stuttgart as pot 4 teams, let alone Inter, Barcelona, Atalanta, and Shakhtar away. Again, maybe there's an opportunity to get some points away at Celtic, but when you're looking at who's going to make it into that next step, I think the Young Boys are going to struggle, and I put them in 32nd. Next, in 31st, I see Dinamo Zagreb. I do think that they could get an opportunity to get 3 points against Slovan Bratislava. Maybe then as well against Red Bull Salzburg. But beyond that, it's going to be difficult to see. If they're going to make it, their 3 games that they should be targeting would be at home against Celtic and the other 2 that I mentioned. If you can get 3 wins, I think that would be enough for you to get into the playoff round of the Champions League. So if I was Dinamo, you're targeting those 3 games, and maybe Monaco at home is a luxury game if you can pull out a draw there. But I think it is going to be difficult for Dinamo to move forward. I've put them in 31st. And in a similar fashion, for 30th, I have Red Bull Salzburg. Again, I do not see them getting any points out of their top 4 matchups from pot 1 and pot 2. There's a reasonable matchup for them against Sparta Praha. If they can turn out and get a result against Stade Brestois, maybe then they can look at moving forward, and getting a result against Dinamo would be essential to that as well, right? And so I see them again, maybe probably drawing one of those games, maybe both, or at least 2 of those games, and just missing out on the playoffs being in 30th. And in 29th, I have Stade Brestois. Again, looking at their pot 1 and pot 2 teams, there isn't really any opportunities to get wins there. I would favor them against Sturm Graz at home and maybe at Sparta Praha away. But again, it'll be tough to go to Red Bull Salzburg. You could get your maybe 7 points to be close to qualifying if you can get your 2 wins against the pot 4 teams and maybe a draw at Salzburg. But beyond that, I don't think they're going to progress based on their schedule. Again, they also aren't doing as well domestically, so I think that'll factor in that they're just not as sharp as they were last year, so I put them 29th. Next, maybe this is a surprise. They are the first team I'm mentioning from pot 2 from the original draw. Club Bruges I have in 28th. When you take a look at their matchups, again, Dortmund, Man City, Juventus, Milan. I do not see Club Bruges getting many opportunities there. And then getting Sporting at a pot 3 game is a tough matchup. Plus, going away to Celtic, it's hard to go to Celtic and get results. And then at home to Aston Villa. Like, the only one that I see that is a gimme or a favorite would then maybe going away to Sturm Graz. So I think despite Club Bruges having more experience at this level, I think this is a tough schedule for them, and I think that they will struggle, and so I see them sitting in 28th. Just above them, I have Celtic. When I look at Celtic, I see that their home matchups might be to their favor, and that's where then I could see Celtic potentially getting higher than this and getting into the playoff round. If they could pull out a result against Club Bruges, Young Boys, and Slovan Bratislava, that could be the 9 points that they need, as well as then they have Dinamo Zagreb that they're traveling to, where you could get some points there. Maybe if you then pull out a draw against a team maybe like Leipzig at home, that would give you an added boost to get into the playoffs. I do have Celtic just missing out because maybe there's a draw against Club Bruges or a draw against Young Boys that makes them just short of that qualifying amount of points that they need. So I have Celtic at 27th. Just above Celtic, I have Feyenoord at 26th. Again, this might seem like a surprise for how well they did in the Eredivisie to be champions there. However, with losing Arne Slot to Liverpool, I think it's going to be difficult, and they've also had a little bit of a slow start in their domestic league. Now, when you look at the matchups, Bayern, Man City, Leverkusen, Benfica, I don't see many results there. And then up against Lille and Girona away as their pot 3 and 4 teams, I think it's going to be difficult. Now, can they do that? Absolutely. I think they could get wins against Salzburg and Sparta Praha, but that's being 6 points, I think might just be shy of being able to qualify, and so that's why I have them at 26. Now, at 25, and just missing out on that, I have another pot 2 team, which is Shakhtar Donetsk. Again, when I look at their top 4 games, Bayern, Borussia Dortmund, Atalanta, Arsenal, I see those as being very difficult for them. I don't see them getting any points off of that. And then when you look at traveling to Bologna, hosting Brestois, traveling to PSV, to me it seems like that could be, again, where there's some slip-ups and an opportunity where they're not going to get the results that they want. And that might be just enough for them to miss out. Again, probably I would predict wins against Young Boys and probably maybe a couple draws or as a win against Brestois or Bologna. But with that said, that may not be enough, and you're not going to then qualify. So Shakhtar just outside the qualification at 25th. And in 24th, just above them, I have Bologna. Now, again, this really is going to come down, in my opinion, to the result between Bologna and Shakhtar on who fits this last spot. I'm giving it to Bologna as the home team in that matchup. But again, I'm looking through, and they've got some tough matchups here as well, right? Away to Sporting, at home to Lille, and this could be tough for them. I do think Bologna has enough to then make that push forward, and they are just going to make the playoffs. So I have Bologna at 24. At 23, again, just above that drop zone, I have Lille. Again, Lille has had some decent success in their domestic league as well as then at the Champions League in the past. So I do see them having some pedigree. And when you take a look at home games against Feyenoord, Sturm Graz, away at Bologna, away at Sporting, I do favor Lille in most of those matchups. Whether they get the full 3 points or not will then depend. But, if you're getting 8 to 9 points out of those 4 games, I think Lille is going to be comfortably into the playoffs, sitting at that 23rd position. In 22nd, I have Aston Villa. When I look at Aston Villa's schedule, having Club Brugge as a pot 2 team, I think could be where they could get some points where they could steal. Had home to Celtic, away at Young Boys. If you take those 3 games and give them wins, Aston Villa is in the playoffs. Okay. Plus, you may have an opportunity to pick up points against Bologna and go from there. I think Aston Villa is a strong team. It'll be interesting to see them back into the Champions League for the first time in a long while. But I think they can give themselves a good run and get into 22nd position in the league phase. Just above them, I have Monaco. When I look at Monaco's schedule compared to Aston Villa, I think there's a few more easier matchups. So at home to Crvena Zvezda, away to Dinamo, you're going to have, I think, great opportunities to get points there. Again, we'll see how they do against Aston Villa, but I think they could even get points off Bologna. They could maybe get points off of Benfica as well, and kind of secure themselves into that playoff mix. I'm going to have them at 21st position. And just above them, I have Stuttgart. So Stuttgart out of pot 4. Again, when you look at their 2 pot 4 matchups, you see Sparta Praha and Slovan Bratislava, and even their pot 3 matchups, Young Boys and Crvena Zvezda. I really like how Stuttgart can do against those teams. They aren't going to have as much success against Paris Saint-Germain, Real Madrid, and Atalanta, Juventus. But if they can take opportunities against the pot 3 and 4 teams, they could come out of this with 12 points, which could comfortably put them in there. Even giving them maybe 1 draw out of those 4 is still going to put them comfortably into the playoffs, sitting in 20th position as my prediction. And just above them, I have Girona. Girona did very well last year in La Liga, getting 3rd in the league. And I see that they are still doing decently well. Maybe not as good. However, I think they strengthen well and are ready to take on the Champions League for their first time ever. I do see them as favorites for the pot 4 games against Slovan Bratislava and Sturm Graz, and I think they can be reasonably competitive against the 2 Dutch teams, Feyenoord and PSV. Where they would slip is probably those games, but if they can get good results like they had a lot last year, I see them still able to get maybe 10 points out of the pot 3 and 4 teams, which would be more than enough for them to get into the playoffs. So I'm going to put Girona at 19th. Just above them, I have PSV Eindhoven. Again, looking at Some matchups at home against Shakhtar, I think, could be to their benefit. At home against Sporting, and then opportunities at Crvena Zvezda, Stade Brestois, at home to Girona. I think all those could be games where PSV gets points. Will they get 3 points in all of them? No, but I think they could get a couple draws, 2 or 3 wins, and they would be comfortably in the kind of the middle of the playoff pack. And so I have PSV sitting at 18th position. Just above them, I have Sporting Clube de Portugal. When I look at their matchups, at away to Club Bruges is maybe one that they could take on. I think at home to Lille, at home to Bologna, I would favor Sporting. They look really solid. And I think they're going to do some damage to some teams and maybe surprise people. PSV and Sturm Graz, I think, are winnable games for them as well. And so looking at them, I think they'll be right in that mix, just comfortably sitting in the middle of the pack in that playoff round. And so I have them sitting in 17th. In 16th, Portugal team as well in Benfica. Why I have Benfica a little bit above that is maybe I see them a little more favored in some of those pot 3 or 4 matchups, where I think they could beat Crvena Zvezda a little bit better or a little bit more, favor them against Bologna, favor them against Feyenoord, and I could see that Benfica maybe getting all 4 of those pot 3 and 4 games as wins. 12 points would be strong for them to then sit comfortably in the middle of the pack of the playoffs. Next, this may be a surprise, but I have our first pot 1 team that we're discussing is RB Leipzig. I think when I look at their schedule, I don't think there's a whole lot of gimmies here. I do see them getting results against Celtic and Sturm Graz, but at home to Sporting, at home to Aston Villa, those are tough draws to have from pot 3 and 4. And there are certainly no gimme matchups between Liverpool, Inter, Juventus, Atleti. So when I look at them, I don't see them getting as many points. Maybe you get 13 points. You could maybe, if you could get all the 4 wins out of your pot 3 and 4 teams, plus a draw somewhere, that gives you 13 points. But really, to get that amount, that sits you right in the middle of the pack when you're dealing with playoff teams. And so 15th is what my prediction is for RB Leipzig. And maybe in similar surprising fashion, in 14th, I'm going to have Paris Saint-Germain. Again, when you look at their pot 1 and pot 2 teams, it's very difficult for me to see that they're going to get a lot of points out of that. Maybe you can get a draw somewhere in there, but Man City, Bayern, Atleti, and Arsenal are tough matchups. On top of that, you have to then go to Stuttgart, and you're at home to Girona. Those are tough matchups as well. I do see that Paris Saint-Germain could get results there, but that's where then I'm going to see, is this team without Mbappe going to be a good enough challenge that they can be strong in the Champions League? I think there's going to be some growing pains. I'm going to have them sitting in 14th, but firmly in a playoff position. Just above them, I have Atalanta, our Europa League winners. Again, looking at their matchups, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Arsenal are going to be tough matchups. I do see that they could get points out of Shakhtar, and the rest of the games, I could see them getting points. But again, when you're looking at pushing to that next level, 15 points, if you give those 5 wins to them, is still not enough to push into the top 8. So I think Atalanta is going to be kind of a little bit behind that, sitting around the top of that playoffs, but not much further than that, and putting them in 13th position. Similarly, I have AC Milan in the similar spot, sitting in 12th. Again, I can see them winning the game against Club Bruges at home, and most of the wins coming from pot 3 and 4 teams. But playing Liverpool, Real Madrid, and Leverkusen, it's going to be difficult for me to give them the edge on those games. So again, around that 15-point range, AC Milan is just going to be on the outside of that top 8, sitting in 12th position. Also just outside is going to be Bayer Leverkusen. When I look at their team, I do see that they could be strong and maybe put an upset on some of the teams that are in pot 1 or pot 2. I do see the 4 games in the pot 3 and 4 as being winnable games and them moving through. It's just a matter of, can they put the results together against some of the top teams? They're, I think, going to just be a little bit short, maybe get a draw or 2 in there against those top teams, and maybe just be on the outside. I'm going to put them at 11th. Another team that I have just outside the top 8 is Inter Milan. Again, I could favor them against Leipzig, and maybe they could do well against Leverkusen, but it is going away, right? If you're looking at moving to that next level, you're going to have maybe 18 or 19 points to move into that top 8. So that means you're getting 6 wins. Do I see them getting 6 wins from the schedule? It's going to be tough. I don't know if you're going to get that from Man City or Arsenal, but I think Inter is one of those candidates that if someone falters, they could be the team that pushes into that top 8. And so I'm sitting them just outside of that at number 10. Another team that is just outside of that top 10 is Juventus. Now, I did a quick, for myself, just a quick predictions of all the matchups, and I have Juventus getting 19 points, right, as a general prediction, getting some draws in here, wins against Benfica, potentially wins against Club Brugge, and that was tying for 2 others that are just above them. And so it could come down to goal difference on whether Juventus is the team that's in that top 8, or maybe there's a couple other candidates that are ahead of them that will get that position instead. But I do see them as a strong team. They're going to get and be in most of these games. I do not think they're going to overcome Man City, but they could get 7 wins out of this and be comfortably in that top 8. I'm curious about how they'll do against Leipzig and Benfica, if they're going to drop some points there, which then might cost them the top 8. So I have them sitting in 9th. Again, one above Juventus, I have Barcelona. Again, as I did this, it was Barcelona also I predicted to be about 19 points. I see them comfortably getting points against the pot 3 and 4 teams. They could get wins against Benfica and Atalanta as well. Dortmund and Bayern are going to be where there's stumbles there. I don't think they're going to get points against Bayern. However, they've shown that they could at times. I think they could be favorable against Borussia Dortmund. And so be right on that cusp. If they drop points in anywhere there, that could then drop them down into the playoffs. But I'm just going to put them on the edge at number 8. So number 8 for Barcelona. And the other team that was also very close when I was discussing who was going to make that top 8 is Borussia Dortmund. Again, looking at their schedule, I think what's to their benefit is how their pot 2 draws went, with getting both Shakhtar and Club Brugge. I think is very beneficial to them. I might have put them lower if they had better matchups there, but I could see them for sure getting then 6 wins based on this schedule. And if they could then get a draw, maybe against Barcelona at home, right, that could be enough to push them into that top 8 position. I'm going to then sit them in 7th. And in 6th, I do have Arsenal. Again, when I look at Arsenal, I see that they are going to be favored well against all pot 3, pot 4, and I see them being good at the pot 2 matchups as well. Where I would maybe say they don't make the top 8 is if they can't get a result in Atalanta, but I do see them as being a strong team. They're showing that again in the Premier League, and I think now their second year in a row being in the Champions League, I think they're going to show how good they can be in this competition as well. Also, potentially, I favor them a little bit against PSV at home, or PSG at home, and maybe even getting a draw or a result at Inter. That might be a stretch, but I do see all of them as being favorable matchups for Arsenal. And to be in the top 5 or top 6, you almost need to be favorable in most of the matchups and feel like that team could go and win. I don't think Arsenal can go and win all of them, right? Where I think Inter might be the toughest matchup there, maybe PSG at home. But I do see them doing well and being in the top 8, Arsenal sitting at 6th. And in 5th, I have put Atletico Madrid. They seem to do very well in the Champions League. No matter what they're doing in La Liga, they do very well. And when I look at the matchups I see here, getting home to Leipzig and away to PSG, I think is a very favorable matchup for them. And we could look at them getting any result when we see these, right? So winning most of them, probably drawing a lot of good teams, and then not really losing much. And so with that in mind and their Champions League track record, I see Atletico Madrid doing well in this league phase and getting all the way up to 5th position. So 5th position for Atletico Madrid. Now we're getting down to the last 4, and where I see Liverpool is sitting in that 4th position. Again, looking at their matchups, I see them as being favorable. I like how Liverpool has started out defensively in the domestic league, although losing to Forest isn't the greatest, a good result. But generally, I think Liverpool is going to be strong again this year, and they're going to do well in this tournament. Again, maybe Real Madrid is the toughest matchup they have, but having them at home, I think, will be to their benefit as well. So in this case, I'm going to put Liverpool at number 4. And just above them, I have Real Madrid, our defending Champions League winners. Having a home matchup against Borussia Dortmund, I think, is a nice rematch. But I do see them favored in that. I see them favored in most other matchups against Milan and Atalanta. Liverpool could be a scenario where they drop points. And really, when you look at the top of the table, if there's any scenario where you drop points, that might remove you from being the top 2. And that's why I have Real Madrid just sitting in 3rd. If Liverpool or maybe even Borussia Dortmund can pull off a draw against them, that would be the scenario that you'd see, and they would not be in like the top of our league phase. So I have them, and I'm predicting them in 3rd. And I have 2 teams left, and when I went through and looked at their schedules, there was, in each of them, I had predicted that they could go and win them all. Bayern Munich has traditionally done very well in the group stage of the Champions League, and I think in this league phase, all of their matchups I think are pretty favorable. Having PSG at home and even going away to Barcelona, which is probably their tougher matchup, Bayern Munich has done well against Barcelona in the past, and the rest of their matchups I see them doing very well. So I do see them potentially not losing at all, and it really comes down to point difference between Bayern Munich and the last team that I have to talk about. So Bayern Munich, number 2, I see them doing very well in that number 2 position in the league phase. And finally, number 1 in the league phase is Manchester City. Again, you can see the tough matchups as being at home to Inter, although I do favor them in most of their home matchups. Away to PSG, there might be a stumble there. But beyond that, I think there isn't too much issue with how their schedule is laid out for them. I think Man City could run the table as they're running the table in the Premier League as well, and putting themselves in a good position for the Champions League playoff bracket at the end of this league phase. So I have Manchester City being the top team from the league phase this year. And so here is just a summary of my entire list from 1 to 36. Please like and subscribe if you like this content. I will be putting out shortly a predictions video for the first match week of Champions League football. Put a comment down if you disagree about what my predictions are, or if you have your own predictions, please put them down in the comments as well. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you again next time. Bye for now.